Gilberto Mora was only 15 years old. Most players at that age are still dreaming about their first professional game or playing Minecraft, but Gilberto Mora was already making history. He became the youngest goal scorer in the history of Mexican football, and then he broke another record, and another, and another. Some of those records have stood for almost 100 years. He destroyed them before he could even drive a car. But here's the crazy part, none of that are the reason people believe he could change Mexican football forever, because the biggest moment of his career hadn't happened yet. Gilberto Mora was born on October 14, 2008. He grew up in Tuxtla Gutiérrez in southern Mexico. Football was always close to him. His dad was a professional footballer, but there's something I really like about his story. His dad never forced him to play. He didn't tell him he had to become a footballer. He simply let him enjoy the game, let him fall in love with football by himself, and that made all the difference, because very quickly people realized this wasn't just another talented kid. There was something different about him, but not because he scored a lot of goals. It was something much harder to explain, and that's what caught everyone's attention. One moment tells you everything. Before a Mexico game, the players were sitting on the team bus. Some were on their phones, some were laughing. Then there was Mora. He was reading a book. Santiago Jimenez looked over and couldn't believe it. He simply said, "That kid is different." Now, reading a book doesn't make you a football star, but it tells you something about how he thinks. And once you see him play, it all starts to make sense, because his first professional season was completely crazy. Let's go through them. At 15, he became the youngest goal scorer in Liga MX history. Not one of the youngest ever. And then, he captained the Mexico's under-17 team. Soon after, he made his professional debut for Club Tijuana. And guess what happened? He came off the bench and helped create the winning goal in his very first match. Think about that. Most teenagers are nervous just walking out on the pitch. Mora looked completely calm, like he had been there for years. Then, another record disappeared. He became the youngest player ever to play for Mexico's senior national team. A record that has survived for almost a century. Gone, just like that. At this point, people weren't asking if he was talented anymore. They started asking something much bigger. Was Mexico looking at his next superstar, or was this only the beginning? Then came the 2025 Gold Cup. Mexico needed players who could make a difference. Mora was still only 16. Most people expect him to learn, maybe get a few minutes. Instead, he helped Mexico lifting a trophy. And with that, Gilberto Mora became the youngest player ever to win a senior international trophy. Younger than Mbappé, even younger than Lamine Yamal. Just stop and think about that for a second. He's only getting started, and somehow the biggest moment of his career was still waiting. If you have made it this far, you already know this story is something special. So if you are enjoying this, hit a like and subscribe and help the channel grow. But let's keep moving. June 11th, 2026, Mexico City. The opening game of the World Cup. The stadium was full. The pressure couldn't be bigger. And then Gilberto Mora got the call. He stood up, walked to the touchline, and made history again. At just 17 years old, he became the youngest Mexican ever to play in a World Cup. Another record, another piece of history. But here's what surprised me the most. Before he even touched the ball, the fans were already chanting his name. Imagine that. You're 17 years old. You have just stepped onto the biggest stage in football and have an entire stadium already believing in you. But here's a real question. Why does everyone say he's different? Not just talented, different. Because that's where this story becomes even more interesting. What makes Gilberto Mora so special? Because Mexico has produced talented players before. Fast, strong, great players. But coaches don't talk about Mora because of any of those things. They talk about his football brain. Watch him for 5 minutes. He already knows where he's going before he gets the ball. He doesn't rush. He doesn't panic. He waits. Then, one pass changes everything. It looks simple, but that's exactly why it's so hard. One of his coaches once said something that really stood out. He may be 17 on paper, but he thinks like a much older player. That's a huge compliment, because talent can win you games, but your mind, that's what builds a career. And it wasn't only people in Mexico saying it. He's already on the radar of big clubs and scouts. And that's where this story takes another turn. The European clubs are already calling him. Most players wouldn't even think twice. Mora did. And the reason why tells you exactly who he is. So why he stayed? Just before the 2026 World Cup, Gilberto Mora signed a new deal with Club Tijuana. A lot of people didn't understand it. Why stay? Why not leave while everyone wants you? He said, "I'm grateful to Club Tijuana. This club helped me grow, not only as a player, but as a person." That line says everything. He wasn't chasing the bag. He believed there was still more to learn. Mora is thinking about the next 10 years. But staying in Mexico wasn't the biggest gamble. The biggest question is, how good can he become? Every generation gets one player who changed how people see football in their country. Could Mora become that player? It's a huge question, but when you look at his age and where he's already, it's not as crazy as it sounds. Right now nobody knows, and honestly that's what makes football beautiful. Every great football story has a beginning. For Argentina there was Messi, for Portugal Cristiano Ronaldo, for Brazil Pelé. Maybe this is the beginning of Mexico's next great story. Maybe Gilberto Mora becomes one of the best players in this country. Maybe he becomes even more than that. We simply don't know yet. But one thing is already certain, we're watching the start of something special. And years from now, when people talk about Gilberto Mora, you'll be able to say, I saw the beginning. So now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Gilberto Mora will become a Mexican legend? Or is the hype getting too big? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video. And I'll see you in the next one. Follow for more.